Flexibility. Adapt or perish. Everything changes. Our body changes. Our ideas change, and so do our moods, or the moods of the people we are close to. Our loves and our friendships change. Our finances and our life plans change. The causes of our suffering or happiness change. The political situation changes. Fashion and the weather change. Even change itself changes. In a universe in which nothing stays the same, it is hard to find any stronghold that may offer us protection and security. The only way to survive consists in the art of adapting to events that continually take us by surprise. If you adapt, you survive. If, in the midst of changing conditions, you stay fixed, you perish. Every tiny detail in the living world is a hymn to adaptability. The eye of an insect, the plumage of a tropical bird, the fin of a dolphin, the bone structure of a flying fox, the strategy of a reptile, or the functions of the human brain are all testimonies of adaptation to a life in continual change. Those who do not adapt end up like the dinosaurs. Flexibility and adaptability are characteristics that science and technology have tried to understand and imitate. A good example are the telescopes of the future, based on adaptive optics. Earth's atmosphere is a filter that obfuscates and distorts the images coming from space. The new telescopes, aimed at faraway stars, will take the atmosphere into account and will adjust their mirrors according to atmospheric perturbations, modifying them infinitesimally hundreds of times a second. In this way, we will be able to obtain precise photographs even of extrasolar planets, which till now have eluded us. It is an invitation with its own symbolism. We will be able to see farther, not by overcoming the obstacle, but by adapting to it. In military strategy, the more flexible entity is the one that wins. Thus, the English battleships, lighter and faster, had the advantage over the slow, heavy galleons of the invincible Spanish Armada. Adaptability is the secret weapon in the business world too. There, rigidity is the tantamount to defeat. To sell umbrellas during a drought or school texts at the start of vacation has never made anyone rich. Those who are able to sniff out the demands of a market in continual flux survive and grow wealthy. Flexibility is a form of practical wisdom. An intelligence that lives in the present, that knows how to read the slightest sign of change, and then has the facility and pliability necessary for adapting to the new conditions. This kind of wisdom comes from understanding that we cannot control every single element of our existence. To want to master our actual situation is a legitimate desire, particularly if we are surgeons, pilots, or tightrope walkers. But total control over our lives is a fiction. Too many unknown variables are at play. If we tried to control every aspect of our lives, we would go crazy and risk getting the opposite of what we want. It is often wiser to accept the unexpected. If we don't, we are in trouble. It happened to me once. I was to be interviewed on an important live radio broadcast. My words would go on air with no chance of correction or deletion. It was to be a phone interview, and the very thought of being interrupted by one of my children singing or yelling made me insecure. So I arranged to have the interviewer call me at my office a quiet room on the top floor, far from both home and traffic noise. When I arrived there, I was told that the plumber was working on the building's pipes, but I did not give it a second thought. After a while, the telephone rang and the interview started. When we reached a crucial part of the discussion, tackling the lofty themes of the spirit, the unpredictable happened. Although I wasn't expecting anyone, the doorbell rang. Ignoring it, I continued talking. But the doorbell kept ringing. It was the plumber. He knew I was in my office and, because I was not responding, advised me by shouting through the closed door. "Dr. Ferrucci, don't use your toilet for the next 2 hours or you will make a mess." The plumber's prosaic interruption went on air at the moment when thousands of listeners were tuned in to hear my profound words. I have no idea what they thought. Did they believe it was part of the show? I was not amused at all by this incident at the time, and only later was able to discover the humorous teaching it offered me. But right there and then, I was obliged to realize that much as I tried, I was not in control. The outside world did not adapt to me. More simply and practically, it is I who must adapt to what is happening moment to moment. The work of psychotherapy can be defined as the recovery or the learning of flexibility. We help people who are still facing today's situation with yesterday's strategies. The ways that might have worked yesterday, or at least allowed survival, today are disastrous. Someone abused as a child, for example, lives in constant tension, perhaps closing himself to others like a frightened child. Or else, becoming servile or seductive, he tries to ingratiate himself with a potential enemy. These attitudes, however adequate they may have been in the past, have no more meaning today. Now the danger is over, and the time has come to stop pretending and start living. Another example, perhaps a parent has devoted many years to the care of children, looked after their health, driven them to school, listened to their dreams and their troubles, given herself heart and soul to their well-being. The children grow up, leave home, and all this work and devotion has to stop. Like an obsolete machine that is not useful anymore and is left rusting in a corner. The outer scenario is completely new. Will the inner attitude also change? The idea is to help all of us recognize present reality, because with all its hard, unpleasant invasiveness, reality is our great teacher. Reality proceeds of its own accord, without considering our hopes and dreams. Our fantasies are idle if they do not help us face life as it is in this very moment. That is why flexibility is not just a successful strategy. It is also a spiritual quality. It implies freedom from attachments, wakefulness in the present, acceptance of what is. Changes in our life can be unpleasant, even frightful. The people we love may not love us as before. Our professional competence is failing. Our body is weakening. Our products are no longer selling as they used to. Friends who used to give us warmth and support have forgotten us. The activities that once excited us now seem boring and empty. In the face of continual change, Taoism suggests we be as adaptable as water, which flows over and around rocks, bending its shape to flow on. If we can let go of the beliefs we are most fond of, then we can open to the new, to paradox and the absurd. This is creativity. This attitude becomes a way of life, even a spiritual path. We are able to let go of old models and we become humble enough to start all over again. Adapting to the present reality means accepting frustrations. Psychologists have measured the capacity of young children to accept a small frustration. For example, the ability to keep an M&M in the mouth without eating it for 10 to 30 seconds, not to look while the experimenter, making a noise with paper, opens a package containing a gift for that child, to look at toys and to choose one without touching anything, to build a tower of wooden blocks with another child, taking turns and not toppling the tower. According to this research, the children who most easily accept the frustration turn out to be the strongest, most pleasant in the company of others, most conscientious, and most open to new experiences. Years later, these children will be adults who will more easily accept the little opportunities so common in everyday life. You can't find a parking spot. The person you are waiting for is late. The computer crashes. The weather is poor and your trip is canceled. The line at the supermarket is ridiculously long. You have to deal with the boring bureaucracy, and so forth. Reality knows nothing of your plans, and it comes up with ever new ways to pester you. According to recent research, you are bound to meet 23 frustrations today, up from 13 a decade ago. Will you fight or will you dance? The ability to be flexible resonates in our relationships. We may be endowed with warmth and goodwill, but if we do not adapt to the new, we will be stressed, in a bad mood, irritated, hostile, or overwhelmed by a situation we do not expect, and will therefore have less mental and emotional energy for expressing the best of ourselves with others. We will be only half there. The other half will be battling, grumbling, resisting. Because flexible people accept what is, they are easier to be with. With whom would you rather to dine? Someone who complains if there are no prawns flambé accompanied by 67 Riesling, or someone else happy with a plate of pasta and beans? Who would make a better guest? A friend who is grateful for a good night's sleep and who, with no particular demands, manages independently in your home, or a relative who needs your company all the time, complains that the mattress is too hard, and requires you to help him find an expert in Japanese stamps? No doubt about it, easygoing people are a blessing. Desires and demands are the arena in which a relationship is put to the test. If the needs are normal and legitimate, and if they are reciprocally recognized and satisfied, all is well. The relationship works. But imagine that needs become urgent, capricious demands. The relationship then becomes difficult. More than easily strolling in the countryside, it feels like rafting down the rapids. But lo and behold, excessive and arbitrary requests may not be what they seem. In fact, they often are a distraction because they make us evade what is most important in a relationship: to see each other as we are, to communicate, and to get along well together. Many people who are secretly afraid of intimacy erect a barrier between themselves and the other, a barrier made of continuous demands and impositions. There is a cartoon of a woman who has received an engagement ring with a gem, who examines it with a magnifying lens. In that moment, she couldn't care less for her fiancé. All she sees is the diamond. At the other extreme of this continuum, imagine a person content with little. I don't need anything. I am happy just to be with you. What a sigh of relief. Besides, the active demands, the ones we express aloud, the passive ones are also ready to create havoc. They're the demands we take for granted and deliberately do not express. One of the most common is, I expect you to be always the same. Usually, even if we express the hope that people around us change, we are all prone to perceptive inertia. We continue to perceive them in the same way and unconsciously want them to stay the way we see them. Anything that might conflict with our fixed idea of a person will annoy us. We expect those around us to continue being what they were. We label them and then keep them in a mental box. As a psychotherapist, I sometimes receive calls from a client's relatives protesting that she is changing, perhaps becoming more assertive or bringing to light a new trait. Life with her is becoming less easy. All they want is for the client to stop suffering and stop causing suffering to others, but they fail to realize that in order for that to happen, that person has to change. And when she does not correspond any longer to the image they have of her, they get upset. I still remember a father's disdain and surprise when his daughter, till then depressed, inert, obedient, decided to leave her job and take a trip around the world. His daughter had changed. She was achieving her freedom. But her father was holding on to the past and fighting the novelty with all his cannons. It happens to everyone. One evening at a restaurant, instead of the usual plate of pasta and vegetables with mineral water, I ordered a pizza with sausage and a glass of beer. You should have seen my family's reaction. They considered me perverse, an individual without taste, a lost soul destined in the future to cope with serious health problems, though if anyone else ever ordered the same, they would have made nothing of it. They simply could not bear the dissonance with the image they had made of me, and found it hard to think of me breaking out of those confines. Are we an especially rigid family? I don't think so. We are normal. But I vote for liberty. The ideal is a world in which older children and their parents reciprocally give permission to one another to dye their hair, attach any ring to any part of their body they want, follow their sexual preferences, dress as they desire, spend their money as they deem best, choose whatever chemical substance they wish to introduce into their organisms, well, with a few exceptions, change their personalities, and suddenly depart for distant and mysterious lands. To give the people we love the freedom to be what they want to be, to give them the space to experiment, make mistakes, be creative, fail, or succeed. To allow them to discover their 1,000 faces without freezing them in the immutable mold of our beliefs. Without protecting, preaching, pushing, or pulling accordingly to what we believe is best. What a great way to relate. Would you not want others to trust you and treat you this way? Generally, we imagine that the older we are, the more rigid we become. But it is also true that children are creatures of habit and often dislike change. And I happen to think that we ought to respect their need for structure. I once tried to surprise my goddaughter, whom I had not seen for years, by hiding in a wardrobe and popping out suddenly when she entered the room. The joke did not please her at all, and she ran away crying. She was right. Godfathers do not come out of wardrobes. Children need fixed points of reference. You don't take flexibility too far. With adults, however, it is a different question. If we manage to relax our rigidity and not take our expectations too seriously, we will give space to others to be what they want to be, to express new ways of thinking and acting, to show us unexpected sides of themselves, and perhaps to mature. If you enter into a relationship with someone secretly expecting he will stay the same, because after all, you are used to it this way, when you will be relating with a subscription or with an insurance policy, then you will be relating with a subscription or with an insurance policy, not a real person. The more chances you give him to change and experiment, the more the relationship will become an adventure in which you both wonder what the next step may be. The family, too, can be more or less adaptable. It can adjust to moments of stress, to changes, and to difficult periods in childhood and adolescence. Studies show that the greater the adaptability of the family during the children's adolescence, the better will be their intimate relationships when they are adults. If we are flexible, not only do we adapt more easily to others' changes, but we will be better manage the difficult task of yielding without getting depressed or angry. To yield may mean, for instance, to acknowledge that another person knows more than we do, to say sorry for a mistake, to acknowledge our wrongs, to give way to others. Have you ever found yourself at an intersection or in a lane where not a single car would slow down to let you in? Maybe I was one of those drivers. When I drive, I sometimes yield to other drivers, but other times I don't. And then, I have come to realize, I need to justify it to myself. I will say to myself that I am in too much of a hurry to stop, or that the other driver was advancing too aggressively, or that if I did stop to let him in, I would risk being bumped from behind. And yet, think about it. How does it feel when all the cars keep moving in front of you and pretending you are not there? Or maybe even accelerate a bit to close the space available and prevent you from edging in? And how does it feel when someone stops to let you in, and maybe even smiles? That is what kindness feels like. Driving is perhaps the arena in which it is hardest to yield. I still remember a distressing scene I witnessed a few years ago on one of the narrow roads in the hills around Florence, where two-way traffic is impossible. Two drivers came opposite each other. Usually, one driver would yield and reverse to let the other pass, but this time neither would do so. They stopped to argue. The more they stated their reasons, the less they were willing to give in. They were both wasting time and holding up others by blocking the road. Worse still, they were harming their own well-being. Yielding is not easy, though we may know it is often the right choice and works best. Our culture prizes self-affirmation and views yielding as a weakness and a defeat. It is what we often see in political debaters who have a terror of appearing incompetent. Actually, the ones who at all costs want to appear strongest are usually the weakest, and at times they look ridiculous or pathetic. Comics have sometimes expressed this fact with great humor. I am thinking of a famous scene in Chaplin's The Great Dictator, in which Hitler and Mussolini have no other way to show their superiority over each other than by sitting at an even higher level. Eventually, by elevating their chairs more and more, they end with their heads against the ceiling. The nicest aspect of being flexible, and the one that has most to do with kindness, is perhaps availability. People vary immensely in the degree to which they possess this quality. Some hide behind answering machines, impersonal assistants and waiting rooms, lines and waiting lists. Sometimes they are very important people and the waiting is justified. But I suspect that often it is a front to make you feel, by their extraordinary unavailability, that they are much more important than you are. I once asked to see a literary agent whom I would have liked to handle one of my books. The secretary made a fuss, then told me I would have to send a detailed biography, and that after a few months the agent would concede me an interview. That concede just sounded too patronizing, so I dropped the matter. Just as well, the agent I have now is always available, and when it comes to selling my books, she is dynamite. To be available can, of course, be tiring and can open the door to people who exploit us and waste our time. Also, many of us are loaded with work. We cannot respond to every request, return every call, satisfy every need, answer each email. But this is not a matter of physical impossibility. It is a matter of holding an inner attitude of availability as a guiding value in dealing with others. A little more kindness and good organization does a long way to making people feel welcome. I have seen doctors who make you wait in overcrowded waiting rooms in the company of other distressed patients, some given to violent coughing or loud lamentations, so that when at last it's your turn to see the doctor, you are sicker than you were before and can't wait to get out. And I've seen people who can be available straight away and will meet you just because you are there and need them in that moment. I know a violin maker in Florence. Her studio is behind the Palazzo Vecchio. She is famous for the extraordinary quality of her violins and has served some of the world's best violinists. Yet if I bring her my son's little violin to fix, she drops what she is doing and fixes it in a few minutes. In another field, I know a man called Fulumin. Lightning. Believe me, his true name. Who started a shutter company. I called him once and spoke to the secretary. After giving my details, I asked when he would be able to come fix my shutter, hoping to hear something like, "In a few days." The secretary's reply was, "He's already on his way." Now that's what I call availability.